I thought that Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth got rid of all wokeness from the military, but it turns out it's not true. We're going to talk about that and so much more on this episode. Let's get into it. Welcome into this week's episode of the Undergrad Podcast on our Friday Cultural Review. I'm joined by Daniel Hayworth. Good to see you, Daniel. How you doing today, buddy?
Good to be here with you, Pastor Nate. I'm excited to get into our conversation today.
Well, bro, so I read this article on human events, and the title of the article was Exclusive. U.S. Marine leaders are trained to fear incel white men as a national security threat. And then lo and behold, the article is by none other than Daniel Hayworth. Dude, I started reading this. I'm blown away. And I'm not upset with our administration. I think so much deep state nonsense is still happening that they don't even know about. There's so much crap that Biden and Kamala, they just kicked all this stuff rolling. And even in Trump's first
before that.
I mean, Obama had it so set up that in 4 years, Trump, and he was trying, believe it or not, he was being Mr. Nice Guy in the first 4 years, kept a lot of people around he shouldn't have. And this stuff's still going on. But dude, you eliminated something incredible. And I knew our podcast listeners had to hear about it. So tell us about the Zoom call that you infiltrated a couple weeks ago. We got to check this out.
This was last Tuesday, or 2 Tuesdays ago now. Obviously, it's been a crazy news cycle, and really the only story that mattered in the country is Charlie's death over the past couple of weeks. And so I wrote this the day before he was assassinated. And so as an outlet, we decided it was breaking news, but we decided that nothing really mattered other than Charlie's passing. And so it was supposed to publish right after Charlie passed away. But that happened, and there was nothing else that ran, and that's 100% the right call. But just to give you guys a framework, it was a couple of weeks ago that I was invited to sit in on this call, and that's because the outlet knows I was formerly in the military. They know that part of the reason I didn't stay for a career in the military was because I dealt with a lot of the woke stuff that was going on. For reference, when I was in the Army, I was a lieutenant, and that was when Biden was pushing the agenda and the Army was in full compliance with, hey, we're going to start integrating your barracks soldiers that are males, but say they're females, right, into the barracks rooms. That was a real thing that was happening when I was in the military.
So when people say oh, y'all are just making big deals out of nothing, this isn't a real thing.
No, it was a real
thing. You were living it in the military.
I was living it.
They wanted to let people who had a mental disorder and thought that they were something different than their biology move into the barracks. You're dealing with all that. Keep going.
And so I also dealt with a bunch of other stuff. I had a company commander at one point when I was in the military that, and for reference, I'm not grieved or have a grudge about any of these things. I actually think that God let me go through these things when I was a lieutenant in the military because he knew he was going to turn me into a pastor later. Yeah. And he knew that I was going to need the insight into what was happening to be able to help pastor people outside the largest military base in the country, which is Fort Hood. And so I was allowed to walk through what I hope at least is an inordinate amount of these types of things. But I had a company commander who sat me and my platoon sergeant down one day. He was brand new to the company, and we were tankers, right? So we were in a tank company, and he decided that it was worth his time to come and tell us that because we were not, quote, people of color, we were not going to be fully equipped to lead our entire platoon because almost half our platoon was, quote, people of color, right? So ethnic groups, right?
Totally racist, by the way.
Totally racist.
That's completely racist.
Yeah.
If that didn't sound brazenly racist when you heard it come out of his mouth, you got to adjust your filter. All right, keep going.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm just going to interrupt from time to time because this is about you on Fridays.
This was a liberal white guy that went to the same school that I went to, a few years ahead of me. I didn't know him when we were there, but
Texas A&M.
Yeah, we went to a couple of the same places.
Yeah, they just got rid of their woke president, so good for Texas A&M.
Yeah, and he found out I have some relations to people that are in the political world. He told me to my face I should be ashamed of that. I dealt with these things, and me and my platoon sergeant is sitting there, and he's boiling over, and we walk out of there, and he's like, "Sir, I was raised in an effing trailer park. What is this guy think? He thinks he can relate to me because he's this rich Austinite kid. He he's got this worldview." And the truth was, it was detrimental to soldiers to view it that way. Then the transgender stuff really started happening in the military. So as I'm getting out, we see the first integrations on a Fort Hood and some of that stuff. People were going. There were requirements. You had to take your ID card and actually get your ID card changed to reflect your professed sex and stuff. But there are male soldiers that are showing up with lipstick on to formations And a
You
lot
gotta
of
be kidding me.
yeah, and it just I was on my way out to come and be a pastor, and it was weird, right? And everybody kind of tried to ignore it, and everybody kind of knew because most of the people weren't liberal like that. At least none of the like most of the people I was around
Yeah.
weren't that way.
Right.
But there was a handful that really were, and I think the officer corps is worse than the enlisted ranks, right? Because I think those guys live in a like reality better than a lot of the like more educated quotes, nicer ivory, and whatever.
Sure. Yeah.
So I was a junior officer, obviously, and I saw this stuff and I was like, this is ridiculous. And it drove me crazy, right? I hated it. It really bothered me. I started to see it more and more as I was in. And it's not like it's the thing you're sitting around doing and talking about all the time, but it is there and it's happening and it's
Yeah.
starting to affect people's view of things. Um, Even other things that are more controversial. I was put in charge of the first platoon in my brigade to take in female 19 kilos, which are tankers. Um, those were my soldiers. I loved and cared about them just like I loved and cared about all of my soldiers. But at the end of the day, they shouldn't have been there. They shouldn't have been there. They were incapable of meeting the same standards as the male soldiers that I had. But the Army felt that this was a necessary step for the military because they bought into the DEI world. I'm not talking like, you can't tell the difference, kind of like super strong jacked girls. I'm talking like 5'1", 5'2". They couldn't load the tank rounds in the required time. They couldn't pass the same PT test, but they were there because of the DEI policies of the military. And honestly, they were not bad people. None of them I think were bad people. But there were all sorts of issues that come from that worldview that the Army wasn't being honest about.
Yeah.
And so when the opportunity came up to jump on this call, the editors just said, "Hey, do you want to take this?" And I said, "Yes, I do." Because I've seen firsthand how some of this stuff gets into the force. And so a little bit of the background, it was a fully optional call, but it was put out and it was promoted officially by the Marine Corps' own website. And
Okay.
so the Marine
So it's
Corps,
on the Marine Corps website.
yeah, so Marine
And who
Corps,
all's invited to this call?
yeah, so it's what's called it was an open call, meaning that anyone in the Marine Corps, anyone as a civilian or general contractor within the ranks, right, is allowed to take part in this call, and it's posted publicly on what they have as their page that's for National Insider Threat Awareness Month, which is there are things when we talk about insider threats in the military, typically what you're talking about, what it traditionally meant or what it started as meaning is you're talking about people that are in the rank and file that are not there for the good of the force. When you sign up for the military, you take an oath. If you are a enlisted person, your oath is to the obedience of the officers that are appointed over you. If you are an officer in the military, your oath is to the Constitution of the United States. Right? You have a mission that starts with your oath, and it's carried out from that point forward.
Yeah.
To the officers, from the officers that supervise you, and for the betterment of the country.
But this whole insider threat thing, this is supposed to be like to ferret out Nidal Hassan.
Yes, that is how it starts.
That's what it's supposed to find.
It's supposed to
Let's
find.
not let that happen
Yeah,
again.
it's supposed to find people like the people who end up shooting up military bases. And
He was a terrorist that shot up Fort Hood.
yes,
You
that is
don't know that name.
correct. Sorry to clarify, and that was 2009 here in our town. It's supposed to find those people, and it's supposed to help us understand two other things. Like when I was in the military, I took insider threat trainings on espionage. Right, one of the big things is data. Right, and so they want to help. Foreign adversaries will come in and they'll try and win over people. I actually had a situation when I was an officer, a brand new officer, where another officer in a unit adjacent to mine had to deal with a very real situation where someone got court-martialed for coming in and essentially taking pictures of things they shouldn't take pictures of and working with other people in other governments. And, I'll leave that at that. But those are real things. And you're supposed to be able to assess and define kind of who those people are. There is some profiling work that goes into it.
So who are we profiling in this call?
Yeah, but the problem with this call is that the profile is the everyday Marine, right? And so,
Okay, say more about that.
Yeah, so this call was specifically for the Marine Corps as part of their thing, and on the call there was all sorts of contractors, there was all sorts of civilians associated, and civilians associated can mean people like for instance, one of the people that commented during the call is somebody that works with a mental health, essentially, clinic that wants to go back and take this to their clinic that will see both soldiers and people that work full-time on the military base, and now is going to be viewing things through this lens. And so this stuff does work its way into the force through trainings like this. And the call was specifically after what they are titling as incel men. And as you get into incel men, what you're going to see in the call is that they specifically talk about and then other times talk around what they're really trying to say, which is they're really trying to say, and they, I'm sure, would protest this, but I was able to get on the call and I was able to ask a couple of questions about the type of language that they were using and whether it was more hurtful or harmful. And the answer was, well, it actually could be more inflammatory than helpful. I wouldn't phrase things to them the way that we're phrasing them to you now, essentially. In other words, we know that this ideology is actually just going to be divisive and cause more harm to the people that we claim to serve.
But we're going to do it anyway. Okay, what's an incel white man? So
Yeah,
let's define some terms here.
So, an incel white man, when they talk about it, what they mean is incel stands for incelibate, involuntarily celibate. So, like a guy who's not out there sleeping with girls. That is just raw. That's what an incelibate would be, involuntarily celibate. So,
involuntary.
Yeah. So, okay, young men are the majority of the military.
Yeah.
You had a good point on this earlier, which is you have a young son,
yeah.
And like anyone who's celibate, that's a young white man, is at potential risk for being, quote, an incel. And they take it to an extreme. They say,
so we got a 21-year-old. He's white. He's Christian.
He's white. He's Christian.
He's straight. But he's celibate.
Yeah.
And he's a conservative.
Yes.
Boy, he's a threat to the military.
That is essentially what's being said here. Yeah. And so the people that put on this workshop are people that do other kinds of insider threat trainings. But I just want to highlight a few things. Like they would claim that there's nothing woke here. There's none, except that in the call, one of the guys who's leading the call, who's one of the leaders of this company, who not only leads this call, but a bunch of the other trainings that they do as the Marine Corps, he goes, "I'm not trying to be overly woke." And then he goes, "I am woke."
Is this the guy? I'm looking at your article, and there's some dude named Chris who looks like Jabba the Hutt. His picture.
Yeah, with he, him pronouns. Yeah. No, the guy.
Is it unverified because no one wants to verify if it's a he, him?
I don't know.
Because he looks like
it's just how the Zoom works.
Yeah.
But no, the guy that said that is actually the other partner, Brian Van Buren, and he said, "I am woke and kumbaya." Brian Van Buren, and he said, "I'm woke and kumbaya," basically saying, "I am all of these things." He's prefacing saying, "I'm going to say some woke stuff. Not trying to make it woke. I am woke though." And that's what's happening on this call. And so this is what they define an incel as. And I think if you're watching the show, producer Nick is going to put up a picture of this triangle that they put in the training. And I'm sitting here in the training.
Status looking picture.
This is all publicly available. Like I downloaded the slide deck from their website. I did not have to like steal any of this. I didn't have to do anything crazy. This is just what they promoted themselves. And so here's what I want you to notice about this triangle. Misogyny, meaning they think you hate women, right? Because like people that are biblically based conservatives don't typically use that term. That's a term of the left. Misogyny.
When they use the term misogyny, they're actually just usually talking about normal masculinity.
Yeah, they're normally talking about normal masculinity, right? And a lot of the things that they're saying on the call line up with that. Jealousy. Well, jealousy is not a good thing, Pastor Daniel. No, jealousy is not a good thing.
And that's they're jealous because they're letting other people have jobs they didn't earn.
That's right.
And they can't actually qualify for.
Yeah.
But then they still have to earn it and they still have to qualify for it.
So when you get into what the definitions mean by the people that are putting on the training, what they're really talking about is they're talking about stuff like, oh, that girl, this is a DEI hire, right? Well, if you say something like that, then that's a red flag for jealousy, quote. But except those are legitimate things. So if you're a person that thinks like I thought and think that there are certain roles that men should take and not women, and certain roles that women should take and not men, then you're a misogynist. Well, if you think that DEI is a real thing, then you're probably jealous and entitled, right? Because that's the other thing is you have a sense of entitlement, right? You're entitled to this job. Well, all of those things are framed in a way that make some degree of sense. But when you actually understand what they're talking about, then you can see that they're really just defining anybody that they disagree with. They're trying to come up with words that will label anyone that they disagree with as a threat. And here's the thing that I actually think is most important about this picture. Look at the picture of the person that they put inside it. It's not some...
This is like the saddest picture I've ever seen.
Yeah, this is...
Put that back up on the screen, Mr. Producer. We got to look closely because I've got a bowl cut here straight out of 1955. That's not actually what military haircuts look like. He's got a single tear because
single tear.
I guess he's so broken that his right eye is still conservative and his left eye is weak in trending liberal. So it's the one that's crying.
Liberal.
It's the left eye that is leaking tears. Anyway,
So
this is ridiculous.
but it's just a normal white guy.
Who created this?
And he's crying.
That's
right?
not a
And
normal white guy.
That's what
they think a normal white guy.
That's the picture
is.
of it in their minds.
All right, keep going. I'll shut up for a
It's
second.
this whole worldview that just views white men this way. And one of the things that you have to understand is that they really believe this stuff. Like they believe that the threat to the force is most of the people in the force. Most of the military is young men. Most of the men in our country are white. So most of our military is young white men. The largest share of them are young white men. And so here's what happens when you train people to think that they are the problem, right? They start to believe you. We have seen an attack in this country on masculinity, an attack on young white men. Our culture has told them that they're not valued. The left certainly does not think that they are valued. And what I want people to understand is even if this isn't like the intent of the people putting on the training, well, we didn't mean for it to come across that way. I don't care how you meant for it to come across. If this is the worldview that's being promoted inside the Department of Defense, at any level, in any way, it needs to be rooted out, cut out, fleshed out. We cannot go forward into another administration until we are completely done rooting this crap out of the military, because this is not the only time this has happened. This is a case study in what has happened.
Yeah.
My life, I've seen other trainings similar to this. I've seen other things. I sat in a training that there was a lot of viral stories about, because I was sitting in one of those trainings where my commander is standing up there telling us that the greatest threat is white supremacy. It's the greatest threat. Remember, in the Biden administration, the FBI puts out this report, white people, white supremacy is the greatest threat to the country. And who are they calling white supremacists? The same kind of thing that they're talking about with incel white men here, right? They say white supremacist, and you're like, well, I'm not a white supremacist. And then they define it, and they say, here's some pro-life groups like the Hope Pregnancy Center that are a white supremacist affiliated organization. And you're like, whoa. Because you're pro-life, you're a white supremacist. It's that guilt by association. So what they're saying is, if you're a white guy that believes that DI is bad, then you might be somebody in what's we're calling incel culture. It's that same thing where what they say on top is like, yeah, I don't have a problem with that. I don't think that white supremacy is something that I agree with. And they say, well, but you believe in all of these things, and so you're a white supremacist. It's like, no, I'm not. I don't believe that at all. That's not who I am. None of that is true. But they get to define how that label is. And then they start going through some stuff that's weird. And here's where you can really see this point proved, which is they start going through some things that are just standards of normal conservative dialogue, right? And so in the slide deck, and you see it in the article there too, they start talking about these terms that are terms that just generally conservative people use, like red pill and black pill. Well, the red pill thing, obviously, that started in the movie The Matrix. That's where that originates from. And that's not a thing that like one small group of like radicalized white guys believes in. That's not like their terminology. That's like general conservative terminology. When you say red pill to people, what you mean is you want to wake up. You want to actually understand things the way that they are. You know, The Matrix, do you want to wake up, or do you want to stay in the dream?
Stay in the dream.
And then black pill, that's another term that's grown out of that, which is just like people that are doomsdaying. And then they start going through this other stuff.
What's this Chad and Stacy?
Yeah, so Stacy and Chad, they start putting up these pictures of guys and girls on their...
Hold on, on your site for a second. What is this?
I was like, oh my gosh, what are we doing? These are real slides that they threw up. You guys can decide if this is appropriate on your own. Stacy and Chad are just terms that are used generally by conservative people to talk about
Chad.
I don't do Chad is like Chad is just
such a Chad.
Such a Chad, right? That's the thing that a lot of people say. Like you would go listen to like Jack Posobiec's show or like a lot of generally conservative shows, and they would know what a Chad is. A Chad is the guy that's, he's got it all together and he's all these things. And there's a billion memes about Chads, and Stacy is like the conservative girl, right? And there's a billion memes about Stacy. These are just normal people. But what they're doing is they're trying to frame, and again, I am 100% certain they would push back and they'd say, that's not what we're trying to do. I don't care. It's what you are doing. They're guilt by associationing normal people into what they are trying to define as a threat group. In other words, a radicalized.
And I noticed in your article, you said that they were saying if you have a Eurocentric description of beauty, that you are a threat. And I'm sitting here I'm like, so are they basically saying if you like white girls?
Yes. Well, I don't know how else to
take
that. I don't know how else to take that.
What does that mean? A Eurocentric?
Yeah. So one of the red flags that they listed, what Pastor Nate is saying on the call, is they go through all of these things that are red flags. And one of the things that they listed was a Eurocentric vision of beauty, meaning if you are attracted to white girls, you are probably, that's a red flag. That's like one tick on the thing of, are you a threat? here's the point about this. This stuff exists still in the military today. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter, by the way.
So have you gotten this up to our Secretary of War?
I don't think it's made it to his level, but what I do know, and
I feel like he would take the knife to this.
he would
immediately.
absolutely take the knife. He would not approve of this. And I had conversations with people inside the department, and I'm gonna leave it at that because a lot of that stuff is actually still working, and I'm not gonna say who at this point. But I had a conversation with people who were inside the department, and I said, you have no greater time when you can have courage than you have right now. You have all of the cover that you need. You've been living in this world where in the military, you had to sort of go along to get along and play the woke game for a long time because that's how the military officer corps and a lot of these civilian programs like this that are largely put on by civilians but for the force or to adjuncts of the force, these things have been governed by the left for decades. You have every cover, and in fact, in my opinion, every mandate from the highest levels of government right now to action against this
from the people of America and from the government
in whatever way that you can. So what are you waiting on? And the truth is, they're afraid of their careers being lost. They're afraid of people who are more directly higher up than them still being in that sort of woke nonsense worldview. They're afraid of action.
Well, somebody did invite this.
Yeah, they're afraid of somebody invited it. Somebody put it up on their Marine Corps page. Somebody said, we want to have these guys back for other trainings, people that are self-proclaimed. I mean, these guys, like, I'm sorry. At the end of the day, you know everything you need to know about these guys because they have he, him in their, like, they have pronouns in their body.
Just sidebar, if you still have that in your if you still have that in your bio anywhere, just take it out right now.
Yeah, and, like, why are we still...
Who cares if LinkedIn kicks you off? You can still find a job.
That's true. So in answer to your question, I have a couple of contacts that I have in the department that have elevated this. I am certain that people are going to be trying to elevate this, and whatever action happens, either publicly or behind the scenes, to take care of it. What I have said to them is, we have to take this opportunity because this is our chance.
Yeah, this is your chance.
This is our chance. And so if you don't take it now, and if you don't get rid of all of it, it's like when you go and pull weeds in the garden, right? Like, you got to pull it out by the root. You got to get all of it gone. You have to show people that it's not okay anymore. You have to show people that this
leave a massive gaping hole where this used to be. Yeah,
exactly. And this kind of stuff has to go by the wayside because the truth is, you can train Marines and you can train soldiers and you can train airmen and you can train every contractor that's associated. You can train all of these people on how to recognize insider threats, but you don't have to train them that the insider threat is just somebody that looks like them and might be them. Right? The truth is, you train people on how to view people. The proper way to train people on whether or not somebody's an insider threat is actually their behavior. And I'm sorry, not going around and sleeping with women like all the time. That's not an insider threat behavior. I'm sorry. It's just
could be actually virtuous behavior, by the way. It could
be virtuous behavior. Yeah. And like, they are the ones labeling these people. These guys aren't going, like, I had friends that were in the military that would fit every single descriptor that they gave. And you know what they are now? They're happily married. They're living great lives, but they were celibate. And, you know, you could argue they were involuntary or voluntary, but you know what they are? They were just normal guys. The truth is, the behaviors that somebody is going to take action against the force are actions and in their behavior and changes in the way that they behave.
And why is it all so sex-centric? Like, even this, who gives a crap if they're celibate or not, as it relates to whether or not they're a threat to the United States military? Like, why is that even a thing? Everything with these people comes down to sex. It's crazy. It's sex and gender, and the crazier and more non-normative and provocative you can be, the better. This is wild. We got to keep this episode moving. Now, some other things have happened here recently. Go read the article, humanevents.com.
Humanevents.com. Yeah. Humanevents.com.
Check it out.
Yeah, you can look at it. You can find it there.
Link that in our show notes if we can, producers, so they could grab that. But all right, so now something else happened recently. Some other big news. Speaking of taking a knife to things, I was reading that Antifa has now been designated a terrorist organization.
Yes.
Tell me what's going on with that, because I just saw the headline. I know you're a little in deeper than I am on that.
Yeah, so this is a long time coming.
I was about to say, my only question is, why is it taking this long? Yeah.
So the president announced yesterday, when you're watching the show, it will have been several days ago, but the president just announced this week that he is going to officially designate Antifa as a terrorist organization. Now, this is a big deal for a couple of reasons. This is not the first group that the president has designated as a terrorist organization that was not previously designated as a terrorist organization, which has given him the authority and the ability to take actionable steps on. The most recent and most fun people are gonna hate me because I just said the most fun because we blew up some terrorists, but they were narco terrorists, right? So you guys saw the videos, you know.
This is the kind of comments they're trying to cancel Charlie for right now.
Yeah, this is so you guys saw the videos of a couple weeks ago, the first boat that got blown up in the Gulf of America. Which, by the way, I use all the new terms. So when we talk about Secretary of War, that used to be called the Secretary of Defense, right? I use that term. It used to be called the Gulf of Mexico. Now it's the Gulf of America. Like, I'm all in on it.
Well, the left has been changing the name of everything for years.
Yeah,
so why not?
so,
We get in on it and fix a few things.
We blew up 11 narco terrorists who were trying to smuggle drugs into the country. That was because the president had previously gone and labeled these cartels as terrorist organizations.
So he's able to do that.
Yeah, so he's able to do that.
Yeah,
It grants him some powers that if they're not designated as a terrorist organization, then you're not allowed to crack down on them.
Okay.
Now, here's the thing. The question really is, are they a terrorist organization? So I just want us to run through a couple of things. Okay. In the summer of love, the summer of 2020, there were over $2 billion with a B dollars of property damage. There was multiple people murdered. Dozens of people died.
Hasn't that all been happening since they assassinated Charlie Kirk? I mean, have right-wing people been just burning down their cities?
Well, yeah, we've been doing the same thing, right? With our prayer vigils and our calls for you to go back to church, and it's actually in the same level.
Forgive your enemies.
Yeah, repent, forgive your enemies. It's basically the same. I actually heard we were worse. I heard we were like the Nazis. Yeah, which is, by the way, that's the other. If you guys want to know why they call you Nazis all the time,
it's because you can kill Nazis.
Because you can kill Nazis. You can punch Nazis. You can do whatever you want to. If they're a Nazi, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, that's what somebody talking about, just sidebar, Stephen Miller's speech. They were like, oh, this is word for word from Joseph Goebbels from,
He's a Jewish guy, by the way, Stephen Miller.
And I'm just like, first of all, no, it's not. Second of all, like, you saying that, if you really believe that, if you really believe that Stephen Miller is Joseph Goebbels, you should be doing a call to arms.
Yeah.
You should be going and trying to kill people. Like, if you actually believe that.
Yeah, if you believe it, then you have the morally correct and obligatory position to, because when you watch all the documentaries about all these plots to take down Hitler, like, you're rooting for Hitler to die. So if you really believe that that's who we are, then of course you're rooting for violence against us. Of course you're rooting for stuff like what happened.
So we watched a clip of Bernie Sanders, talking about how there's no room for political violence. I thought he made it great. Actually, it was a great speech, best thing, most coherent things to ever come out of Bernie Sanders' mouth. But the one problem was he didn't turn it on his own people, who are busy labeling anybody they disagree with as a monster, as someone who needs to die, which is what you say. When they say you're a Nazi, a fascist, they're saying you deserve to die. No wonder some idiot finally gets into his head, well, the only thing to do with Charlie Kirk, because I've heard he's a Nazi for the last 5 years, is like, what do we do with Nazis? We kill them.
We kill them.
Anyway, keep going. Sorry.
Yeah. And so Antifa is what's behind a lot of this. And so Antifa is a well-funded, although that's going to be outed, I assume, in the coming days.
Well, because now they can do like asset forfeiture and all that.
Do all of this different stuff that previously they aren't able to do. And Stephen Miller, when he went on Charlie's show the day that J.D. Vance hosted it after Charlie had been assassinated, he said that the last text that Charlie had sent him was, we have to find a way to dismantle these left-wing violent organizations. And Stephen Miller said, I am going to write that on my heart and make it my life's mission until my dying breath. He said, I'm going to make this happen. And if you know Stephen Miller, if you've watched the guy, that is not an empty threat. And so days later, Antifa gets designated a terrorist organization. It's rightfully so. All of the violence that they've committed, all of the destruction that they've committed, their entire goal is to go through and scare people into rioting or scare people into their action. Like, that's their whole goal.
Yeah, and them and their big donors are funding these riots. They're the ones who are having all these high quality
in for the riots. They train people. Yeah,
Trump talked about it at Charlie's memorial. How they fund all of this stuff, and they give them the best of the posters, and they give them all the handouts. Wear the mask, and they give them the here's what you do to avoid getting caught. Like, all this stuff is being funded so that people can go and actually do terroristic type things.
Yeah.
Under the name of free speech. And it's crazy. Yeah.
The White House actually did a great job. I wanted to read straight from the White House page. As I go through some of this, they outlined the case for this in their declaration that they're going to designate Antifa as a terrorist organization. And we'll just hit a few of these. It's really long. In July of 2025, members of Antifa cell ambushed officers at a knife facility in Alvarado, Texas. July of 2025, rioters assaulted federal agents at a knife facility in Portland, Oregon. February 2024, transgender Antifa terrorists detonated an explosive device outside the Alabama Attorney General Steve Marshall's office. In March of 2023, Antifa radicals laid siege to a planned police training center in Atlanta, Georgia. January 2023, Antifa members were charged with vandalizing pregnancy resource centers, right? This was back when they were firebombing pregnancy centers, right?
Yeah.
That was a thing that happened. Like, we just forgot that they used to firebomb pregnancy centers in the wake of Roe v. Wade. In August 2020, a self-identified Antifa member shot and killed a Patriot Prayer supporter during a riot in Portland. January 2021, Antifa supporter threatened to shoot police officers and Trump supporters outside the state capitol. There's a long history, it goes on and on and on, history of violence at the behest of Antifa, right? You can literally go and it just goes and goes and goes and goes and goes. So this is a terrorist organization. What does this do? It allows the administration to go in and allows them to do what you said, which is civil asset forfeiture. And for those of you listening that don't know what civil asset forfeiture is, sorry, I'm talking faster than my brain is capable of. That is when the government goes in and they seize your assets and they just say, we're going to take away your stuff because we know that you're funding things. We're going to freeze your funds. We're going to track you guys down as associated members of a terror group, which carries different legal penalties. It means that they're able to go after the organizers. It means that they're going to go after the backers. It means that they're going to dismantle this organization that's grown up across the country as sort of this like grassroots violence activism group. But it's not actually grassroots. It's just that they call people from all over the country and in different parts of the country, and they'll activate these cells of people to go in and commit riots and violence, spark these different protests. They're always at the heart of these violent protests. They're always antagonizing people towards violence. That's what they're there for. The president is recognizing that the violence is a problem on the left and that this group is at the forefront of that. And we have to take them down like they're terrorists because that's what they are.
Yeah.
And we have to get away from normalizing leftist violence. Think about how normal it's become. In fact, by the way, our listeners probably don't even know this because the news about Charlie has been so big. The same day that Charlie Kirk was assassinated, there was another school shooting by a leftist in Colorado. 2 days later, there was another shooting by a leftist. 2 days later, there was another shooting by a leftist. Why is that happening? Because the left has told people they're Nazis, you need to go and commit violence against them.
Yeah.
What the White House is doing is saying, that's not okay, and by the way, you had better think twice. And I think that that's the wielding of the civil magistrate in the fashion that it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
That's actual proper applications of
good godly government is a terror to the evil.
He does not bear the sword in vain.
Right.
That's what this is actually a proper application of that. So this is a great story. I'm super excited about this. I hope that Antifa is left on the ash pile of history.
That would be fantastic. You've covered that well. All right, before we wrap up, we got to talk about your favorite comedian for a minute because he got canceled and now he's uncanceled, but he's still canceled. We're talking about Jimmy Kimmel. I have one question. Why was Jimmy Kimmel not canceled back when he did blackface and made women wearing bikinis do trampoline bounces? Like, when did we get canceled then?
Yeah. So here's this is like I don't even like this story. I love that it's getting attention in a way, but I also hate it because it's like so stupid that Jimmy Kimmel's like stealing oxygen from us when we could be talking about like Charlie and things that matter, which is Jimmy Kimmel, which is another woke, unfunny comedian. He's so not funny and he's really never been funny. And like Pastor Nate said, he used to be popular. Was that in the 90s or early 2000s that he was doing all of those like Comedy Central bits where he just goes up and he like, there's these disgusting videos of him going up to girls that aren't actually like staged for the show and, you know, pretending behind their back to have sex with them. It's disgusting. That's who he's always been.
Right.
He's always been this disgusting guy and he's not funny, but he's on the right side. And so all of these late night shows have just become left-wing advocacy shows. That's all that they are. That's what Colbert was. That's what Jimmy Kimmel is. That's what that's what they are. I'm sorry.
And nobody even watches him. I was looking up some of his stuff. I was like, he's had his viewership for the 18 to 45 demographic was under 130,000 people this year.
Yeah, I mean
that's no one when we're talking about major media.
Yeah, I mean it's just, you know, I don't think there's a single podcast Charlie Kirk's ever done that's gotten as few views as Jimmy Kimmel.
Yeah,
I mean honestly, we'd have to go look at the numbers, but I'd bet.
Certainly not after his first couple of years.
Yeah, and so anyway, Jimmy Kimmel gets canceled by the network for going on after Charlie's death and essentially saying, one, that it was the fault of the right, that the guy that killed Charlie was a right-wing guy, and that we were trying to that's not true. In fact, the guy's conservative family is part of who turned him in. And it was very clear that he had become radicalized by the left in recent years. He's a gay guy dating a transgender. I'm sorry, that's not a conservative worldview. That's not a conservative position. So he goes out and he basically blames the movement that Charlie's a part of for Charlie's death. And then he goes and makes a joke about it. And he makes a joke at President Trump. And there's a clip of him going where he basically says President Trump doesn't care about Charlie. And there was a lot of outrage and blowback. And then the head of the FCC, which is, for those of you that aren't like terminally online in an unhealthy way, like sometimes I am, the FCC, their job is actually to regulate broadcast networks. Broadcast networks, which people probably don't understand this because we live in the age of streaming. Broadcast networks are actually given a license by the federal government. That's how they've been since the days of FDR. And you can argue whether or not that's a good thing, but it is the thing. And the idea behind broadcasting networks is they're funded largely in part by the government. They're given these licenses in order to promote the public good. That's supposed to be their job. And so for decades, when we had all of these networks, back as early as the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, the idea was that the people who are on these networks are supposed to be quote unquote objective journalists. And that's why they hid their bias for so long, is because they understood that these are the rules of the FCC. The FCC chair, Brandon Carr, came out and he said, hey, I think we're going to look into this because I don't think it's in the public good to promote violence.
Right.
And so in response to that, Disney came out and Disney ABC came out and said, we're going to pull Jimmy for a while. Indefinitely is what they said at the time. And everyone's like, great, fantastic. We don't know if it was a pressure from the FCC or if it was a pressure from the public or both or a mix or whatever. And everybody has all these opinions on it.
They should just can him for no ratings.
The truth is, he's not funny. You can't go promoting violence. I have absolutely no problem with this. I have no problem with the way that the White House handled it. I have no problem with the way the FCC handled it. I have no, the sword was already being wielded. We're not unboxing something that wasn't boxed. It's the whole purpose of having him. You can debate the merits of having the FCC.
Yeah.
That's fine. But we should be able to wield it the same way.
Right.
And I don't actually think that it all came from that. I think it actually came from the affiliates. So the local affiliates are the stations that actually run the shows. And so the local affiliates then today, Disney comes out a couple days later and they say, hey, we've decided we are actually going to let Jimmy go back on the air. And everyone's like, are you kidding me? Jimmy is going to go back on the air starting this week. And the affiliates push back. And so Nexstar and Sinclair are the ones who own most of the affiliate networks, the local networks. And they both came out and they said, no, we're not. All of our stations don't, like the advertisers who control where their ads get put and whether or not they want their ads on somebody's show, they've called in and it's a no-go. Like there's a organic pushback from the local levels. The local stations are saying we don't want that guy back on.
Right.
And so the latest update in this story is that both Nexstar and Sinclair are saying we are absolutely not going to put Jimmy Kimmel back on the air. And here's the thing. I hope Jimmy Kimmel's show is forgotten about like a bad fever dream. I hope nobody remembers his name. I hope that nobody's influenced by him. I hope his show never comes back. He's disgusting. What he said about Charlie is absolutely degrading. What he promotes in his show is degrading to the people that watch it and to the people of the country. And I hope he finds God because he needs him.
He does. Well, there's a lot going on out there, even more things happening in the news, but we wanted to cover a few of the stories that have happened in the last week or two. It's obviously the headlines have been dominated by Charlie. We've done a few episodes on that. We're going to probably be talking about Charlie Kirk for a very long time in this podcast, as should many other people. But that's some of the other headlines from the last week or so. So Daniel, thanks for bringing these to us, giving us something to talk about and keeping our minds thinking the right way. The truth is we don't need voices like Jimmy Kimmel. We need more voices like Charlie Kirk.
That's right.
To tell us what is good, what is true, what is beautiful, what is divine, what is eternal. And those are the things that we're after on this podcast. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Till next time. Thank you for joining us today on the Under God podcast. If this episode encouraged you, share it with a friend or family member. Your support helps us reach more people with God's Word. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and at undergodpodcast.com so that you never miss an episode. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, X, True Social, and TikTok for more content, behind-the-scenes moments, and faith-filled encouragement throughout the week. We want to hear from you. Leave a comment, join the conversation, and send us your questions. We will be answering them in upcoming Q&A episodes. Until next time, remember to think biblically about the things that matter most.